Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beneath the Surface Next Level Techniques for Corian Solid Surface. My name is Marissa Bankert, and I am the new Executive Director for the International Surface Fabricators Association. For those of you who are new to our association, ISFA was founded in 1997 as the International Solid Surface Fabricators Association. Today, our group represents fabricators of all kinds of manufactured materials, but remains solid surface at its core. We are excited to host this webinar series, and there's a lot of interest in fabrication techniques and tooling to overcome design challenges and that meet or exceed customer expectation using this revolutionary and robust material. Today, I'm joined by Jeffrey Hutchins, a fabrication specialist who works with the Corian Design Research and Development Team in Buffalo, New York. Jeffrey is a machinist and industrial designer by trade, and he has been fabricating and working with Corian products for 6 years at DuPont. In addition, Maggie Ellis, marketing leader for Corian Design, will be moderating, and she's going to take it away. Thanks, Maggie.
Great, thanks, Marissa. Today's webinar is part 2 in a 3-part series, and each one covers standalone topics. The next webinar is March 20th at 1 p.m., Interior Cladding with Corian Solid Surface. And you can join us to learn about vertical cladding techniques and also see a live wall installation demo. You can go to the ISFA website to register. As well, there will be a link in this presentation that we'll send out afterwards. And today we're covering a number of next level fabrication techniques of Corian Solid Surface, including dye sublimation, designing for deconstruction, and thermoforming. And throughout the webinar, if you have questions, please add them to the Q&A and we'll address them at the end. And now I'll hand things over to Jeffrey.
Thanks, Maggie. Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, the 3 topics, as Maggie said today, like the first one is going to be dye sublimation basics and print layout, which in my opinion is the hard part of dye sublimation, especially if you're doing multiple parts. And then the second topic is designing for deconstruction and some uses of that. And then the third topic is thermoforming and dye sublimation together with Corian Solid Surface. So dye sublimation, many people might not be familiar with it. It was actually patented by DuPont in 1983. That patent expired in 2002, so anyone can use that method. But essentially what it is, it's taking a special ink, printing it onto a special paper, and then putting Corian on top, heating it so the ink transfers into the, I don't want to say pores because Corian is non-surface, but it transfers into the surface of the Corian about 20 thousandths of an inch. So it's scratch resistant. You can use it as a canvas in that case. So here's some examples that have been done. This is an artist made a wall mural. That's one uses of this, of the dye sublimation. Artwork, as down here. And you can fabricate it the same way as like unprinted Corian solid surface. Few limitations and a few caveats with seaming, but there's ways around that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm not going to actually show you the process yet, but I'm going to talk about the layout of the dye sublimation. So there's really 3 parts to dye sublimation, and it's really similar to textile dye sublimation. You have maybe seen it like different sports venues where they're doing t-shirts. You pick out your design, they put it on a press, put the print on there and heat it, and it transfers into the textile. So very similar to that. Over here, we have the example layout. And in this example, and I'm going to show you a video in a moment of it actually printing and how to do multiple parts, because that's where I've seen the benefit of dye sublimation. Is I sometimes have to make little awards or like cutting boards or giveaways. And this kind of revolutionized everything. It made my job a lot easier. Like if I wanted to do text or anything, I'd have to machine it out and fill it in and then sand it. Very time consuming. In this case, you could do multiple parts and you don't need to do any of that. You really just print it out, put the Corian on and heat it, and then cut it out on a CNC. But the key to all that, in my opinion, is the layout. So I like to print a bounding box on a piece of paper, lay out the images. This green line, this is not what I'm going to print, but this is just showing my mill line. So I put the image a little bit offset from the machine line just to compensate for any alignment errors. But what this bounding box does is allows you to cut that stock to that size, put it on top of the print inside that bounding box, and get a very accurate transfer. So this is actually the printer we have. So it's a special dye sublimation printer, and there's different inks available, different companies, but it's like a solvent slash sublimation ink that you need to use. That we have the CMYK version. There is no white dye sublimation ink as of yet. So you're really limited to lighter colors. We've done like darker grays, but like pearl gray is almost the darkest you want to go to really get accurate colors. And then, so after you print out your print, this is the example, you lay the paper down, and this is an Elcom Multitherm automatic machine. This is the one we actually have. So this machine consists of vacuum membrane, so it pulls vacuum, holds it down. You may be familiar with that for thermoforming applications. Well, this one's special because it has a heated tabletop. So it heats it up slowly, and then you hold it for a few minutes at 180 C, and then it drops it slowly. So there's actually a cooling equipment in here. So it heats it up slowly. The whole process takes about 2 hours, depending on the ambient temperature. And so you lay down the print, lay down the Corian, the whole process heats it up and then cools it all under vacuum. And then when it's done, which I'll show you all this later in the slide. Right now, I'm just going to show you the printing and the layout in a couple pre-recorded videos. So this is an example of our dye sublimation printer. And right now it's printing a file that has been laid out in image software. And the way we are laying out this example is with the intention to cut it out on the CNC afterwards. So there's a boundary box around the images, and that boundary box will help us align the Corian onto the paper. So by doing that, you get an accurate origin point that you can then put on the CNC and cut out the shapes that you need to. These are the alignment marks. So I have a boundary box. I've cut the Corian to the size of the boundary box. So let me show you, let me reveal it. And I'm going to go put this on the CNC. So this is our origin point where we've programmed the CNC from. So there's our buffaloes. So let's go put it on the CNC now. So this is those alignment marks that you just saw. This is our origin point. So we're going to lay this corner onto our work offset over here. So let me put up our alignment post. And I'm going to just square this up. So this is that same point. Just helps with alignment. One other thing is that I've oversized this picture just in case there's some slight, you can see it's off the edge slightly. That's going to be fine because it's going to cut it out inside of this picture. The picture's about 1/4 of an inch oversized, so there's a little bit of leeway for the alignment. Okay, now I'm gonna cut that out. So now it's mostly cut out. I leave a little bit of material still in there, and I'll just hit it out like that, and then I'll take it onto a small table router and clean up the edges. So this is just an easy way of doing multiple parts, so you don't have to do individual ones and then set them on the paper. This is just an easy way to automate it. All right, like I said, I'll show you the actual thermoforming process, but that is the key part, is layout and everything. So now I'm going to show an alternative dye sublimation method. That equipment can get very expensive, but if you're a new fabricator and you have some, leftover Corian and you want to make some money on the side doing stuff like this, you can start with just like a t-shirt press.
We just wanted to dig this out and show you all something that's probably more available than a large thermoforming table, a large expensive thermoforming table. So this is just an old t-shirt press that we found. We dug it out, and one of the things we do in research and development is just do different techniques with Corian, and we thought it might work well for dye sublimating onto Corian in a small scale thing. And so this is just a scrap glacier white material. Either it was off spec or they didn't need it to regrind it and put it into our material again, which we normally do. If we have extra material, we'll grind it up and it'll be the particulates in other colors. So we just got a bunch of this material, and that's the same scrap material that we used for the cornhole board. So in the past, if you were going to make a design on a type of surface like this, like a shape that was decorative, you'd have to machine in text or whatnot and then fill it in with either epoxy or seam adhesive or paint and then sand it off again. Well, the great thing about dye sublimation is that you don't need to do any of that. So I have our dye sublimation print in this t-shirt press, and I already have everything set. So it's at a set point of 170 degrees Celsius. It's cool right now. I have the paper down. I'm going to put our blank down on the paper, just kind of eye it up. And then I'm just going to close this. And the way this works is heat and pressure, the same as with the large one that you just saw. It works the same way with the small t-shirt press like this. There's heat and there's pressure. This adjusts the pressure. So I already have the heat set. So I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to let it get up to temperature and hold it there for a few minutes, and then I'm going to let it cool down. All right, so this should be around low enough temperature where I can show you. So I'm opening this up. All right. It's still hot, so I'm having my heat gloves on. Let's see how this came out. Look at that. So nice, easy way to do this with a small portable t-shirt press.
All right. So the next topic I'm going to talk about is something we've been playing around with, and I've been really excited to share this with everyone. So this we call like designing for deconstruction, and it works really well with Corian. And it all started, like I found this book, it's called Make Design for CNC. I think it's on Amazon. There's also ebooks available. And this whole book goes through great methods. And the funny thing is they're all using plywood, but it works amazing with Corian. So you can see here, this is the basics of it. So this cross piece does not fit together properly because the radius inside corner material prevents a flush fit. So when you cut out stuff on a CNC machine, you're using a cylindrical router tool. So you're always going to end up with radiuses in the corner. You could try and go smaller, but you're not going to be able to run it as fast. So if you have a 1/4 inch end mill that you're cutting out parts with, you're going to have an 1/8 inch radius, and it's going to prevent a flush fit. You can see this is raised up a little. So by one of the methods described in this book, you just put fillets there, these dog bone looking structures, and it helps you slide it together. So now there's a flat spot. So 2 flat spots come together. And I thought this was amazing. So I started making a bunch of different furniture and stuff with it, just designing for it to be deconstructed. And it works really well with Corian. Here's some other methods. I haven't explored all of these yet, but here's some examples that are in that book, like an overlap type deal, edge to edge to edge. You could see, how the theory of this works. I've used this one to make some tables. It worked really. We made a bunch of test tables, like a brewery. We made a few tables. just to see how the Corian holds up. And we use dye sublimation on that too. Like really great technique. A lot of fabricators could really expand operations like using this method. Grow like that's what we want. We want growth. We want people to buy our material, use it in different applications. So this is a great way to do that. And in conjunction with dye sublimation, I'll show you some examples. So this is a cornhole board I just was playing around with. We have a lot of people who like cornhole. So we thought it would be interesting. Like, can we make a DFD, we call it design for deconstruction, made cornhole board? So you could see use these same methods in a practical application. This wasn't ideal. I mean, it did work. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cross members, 2 side pieces, and then the top. Goes together well, except that you have protruding parts through there. If you want the accurate dimensions of a cornhole board, that is. I'm going to show you at the end of this, just thermal forming a cornhole board. And if anyone's interested in this or any other models you see, I can share them over email. I'll give you my email at the end. You can reach out. So here's some examples of designing for deconstruction and also dye sublimation and some cool things that we've played around with that maybe will inspire people. So we're in our Corian R&D conference room, and I just want to show some examples of some of the things that we talked about. And this is an example of designing for deconstruction and dye sublimation. So the top of this table, it's dye sublimated. So we made a few of these for a local brewery just to test out and see how it held up outside. They really liked it. The top of this is dye sublimated with a design pattern and their logo, and we also dye sublimated in some QR codes. So when you scan it with your phone, it'll take you to their menu. So when you have the QR code dye sublimated into the Corian itself, you don't have to deal with dirty menus, and it's easy to clean. And we kind of thought outside of the box when designing this. We have this top piece. So there's only 4 pieces in this whole table. You have this top piece, which is intended to be a glass holder, like a wine glass or a like little beer flights. So you take this off, and using the designing for deconstruction techniques, it works really well. Just sits on top of there. We also made another one without this plug in the top, so you could potentially set a pizza pan or whatnot. Just getting crazy with this designing. So I'm going to take this apart. So that first piece was the glass holder. The second piece is the top. And all these edges are eased, so I'm not wearing gloves right now. But see how easy that comes apart? And I cut out a number of holes in this design just for like wind flow, so it doesn't blow over while it's outside. Purse holders. Possibilities are really endless when you're designing with the idea of deconstructing in mind. So let's put this back together. And I'll show you some other examples also, some cool things that you can do with Corian that a lot of people might not know about. So over here, this is just a pedestal with some embedded cell phone chargers. So this is wireless charging. Corian works really well as to not get in the way of different frequencies. And one of those is the wireless charging. So in the top here, I cut in grooves with a spherical end mill. So it has a nice area that you can clean. You could also dye sub the locations of where your phone needs to go. That would work too. This screen right here, this is a nice example of how Corian can be used for like a conference room screen. Works really well with different types of projectors. This, we just took 2 pieces of 1/4-inch material and we seamed it together. So there's a seam in the middle there. And we sanded it to a matte finish. You could also, it turns out, a piece of our wide sheet Corian. It's really good dimensions for a 4:3 aspect ratio. This is made to a 16:9, maybe 16:10.
hung on the wall with French cleats, so super simple, and I'll show some examples of how we hung that to the wall. These down here, these are examples of dye sublimation. We just took some artwork, dye sublimated it on there, and then on the backs of these, we have some audio exciters and a Bluetooth transmitter. So you can hook your phone up to this, and the audio exciters essentially shake the Corian and make audio from vibrating the piece of it. And then I have these on another idea for designing for deconstruction, these small easels. Works really well. When you keep in mind that you want to design things that are easily taken apart, it helps out a lot as far as storage, as far as fabrication, super easy. As long as you have a CNC machine or even a pattern, you could potentially do it by hand. So just one more example of a cool dye sublimation thing. So this is just a piece of Corian, and it's rebated in the back. So now this, where the picture is, it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. And I even dye sublimated this image of a frame around it, so it looks like a framed piece of artwork. And then I put an LED panel behind it, so you can backlight it. So super easy to do. And it's a lot easier nowadays with the thin LED panels that are available. So the possibilities are endless.
All right. So a few examples there.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Before we move on to thermoforming, we've had a few questions come through
Sure.
on designing for deconstruction and also dye sublimation. So maybe we'll just pause for a second. I can toss these your way. So one of the questions is around the limitations of dye sublimation. I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, really the color. There is no white dye sublimation ink yet. We've even in DuPont, we make dye sublimation inks. We haven't come up with that yet. Maybe someone will. That'd be awesome. So that's the main limitation there. And then it only goes about 20 thousandths thick. So you can still sand it, but I use those Abralon pads, the kind of pads people use for like bowling balls at 500 grit, and it doesn't take a lot off, but you only need really one pass or so. And it's best to finish what you want your final finish to be like before you dye sublimate, but sometimes there's smudging, so you might have to sand it a little afterwards.
Great. There's also a question around the best applications for designing for deconstruction.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like the restaurant industry, we donated a bunch to a local culinary school. Like they have a outdoor like culinary thing every year, and we're going on the 3rd year, and it's worked really well. We made a point of sale table, a bunch of different designs, and I have all. If anyone wants those, just email me. I'll share them with you. But it works really well outdoors. That's a good application. Mostly because of the Corian.
So a question came through specifically about dye sublimation and outdoors, like exposure outdoors to the sun. Any issues with that and UV?
We haven't seen any. It holds up well, like years. And this is from direct people reporting to me from some of the places we've tested and like searching online. And it'll hold up for years. It depends also on the color for the most part. I think like if you're using glacier white, that's going to hold up better to some other Corian colors.
Okay, great. I think we can go on.
Okay, so the next topic, I'm just going to basically, so this is like the final thing. This is a cornhole board that we thermoformed, and this is the best cornhole board we made. So it's better than the DFD one. So we dye sublimated onto it and then thermoformed it. Would work really well outside. Holds up to like the standards for the cornhole board. You do have radiuses. But so the way that I like to make molds is, for the most part, and a lot of people probably know this, but you can see here, these are pieces of MDF. So this is the CAD layout, and the layout I use to cut them on the CNC. So I'll make like 1/2 inch holes in each of these pieces and then stack them and glue them together. And these, you know, I put dowels through the middle of it to hold everything together, and then I'll clamp it. And you get a nice solid part of a mold. And then the mold positive part, I just basically cut out of pieces of plywood and then put that wacky wood, like it's basically like Luan or MDF with slots cut in it, so you can bend it around different radii. There are limitations with thermal forming with the radius, and that's all in our technical documentation. So 1/2 inch material, the minimum radius you can do is a 3-inch radius for like unfilled solid color material. Sometimes with the particulate material, you'll get it pops out a little bit. So you have to, you know, know your limitations. You can always sand it if there's any issues, or if you leave it in the oven for too long, it might yellow a little. It always sands off. But this is the way I made this one, and almost like a design for deconstruction method for doing this. And I just used like a nail gun, super quick and dirty. It should hold up. I think we made 4 or 5 so far on it. I think it would probably hold up to make 10 of them. So I might have to make a few more. So this video is going to go through the dye sublimation process and thermal forming, specifically with that model.
So we put our dye sublimation print on top of the thermal forming table. This is a dye sub top. So essentially what happens is that you pull vacuum with this silicone top and it holds it down and it heats it up the bottom slowly, and the ink absorbs into the face of the Corian. So let's put this into place. And you can see here we rebated where the radius is going to be. We cut this out on the CNC machine. And I radiused all the edges just so we don't pop the table. It's pretty resistant, but just want to be safe. We're just going to try and center it. We oversized this. This type of table, it has a vacuum groove around the outside, so you need these thin pieces of Corian. Put them right against the edge, and that helps the vacuum get funneled up there when we pull it down. All right. So let me close this. I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to just go over and turn on the vacuum and then turn on the heating element. And there's a pre-programmed timer. Heats it up slowly to 180 C and then holds it there for 5 minutes and then cools it down slowly to 60 C. And then you'll see it's a nice print on the Corian itself. So it's sucked down nicely. I sometimes, in some cases, if it's sharp text, I'll put weight on top. I don't think we need it for this one. So it's been about 2 hours. I just turned off the vacuum table. I'm going to unlock this, lift up the top, and just see how it came out. There's a lot of static electricity with this type of setup. That's why the paper I put on top is sticking up there. All right, let's see what we got. All right. All right, so it looks like we had pretty good success. The next step, we're going to put it in the oven and try and bend it around the mold. All right, so we just dye sublimated our cornhole blank, and next we're going to heat it and thermal form it onto this mold. So this mold, it's made mostly with MDF, and I have a positive piece here and 2 negative pieces for the radii. 1/2-inch material, which is what we're using, is normally a minimum of a 3-inch radius that you can bend it around. We're actually going to go slightly tighter than that, and to make it easier, we've rebated the backside of this where the radiuses are going to be. So after we have it put in the platen oven, this thing here, it's an oven. It's heated on the top and the bottom. And we're going to take that, put it on there, and keep it in there for 1 minute per millimeter. So this is 12 millimeter material, approximately around 12 minutes from now. We're going to take it out of there, wedge it in the front and back of this mold, and put on the mold negatives to hold the corners, to hold the radiuses in place. And then we're going to let it cool. And then hopefully everything works well and we'll be able to take it out and use it to play cornhole. All right, so let's get to it. Let's put this on there. And safety first. These are heat-resistant gloves. We're wearing eye protection. This is heated at 170 C, which is approximately 340 Fahrenheit. And in this case, we're going to put the dye sublimated portion up, and we're going to put spacers in here so it doesn't actually touch the face of it. All right, so this is our mold. It's mostly made with MDF. The face of it's made with what's called wacky wood. It's basically MDF with slots cut in the back. You can see here. And it just helps it bend around. I couldn't, with this material, get it to a tight enough radius that we need. So I put these metal pipes in here. And you could make these molds out of like Ren board if you had a CNC machine. We didn't need a lot of use out of this. You can also 3D print molds nowadays. There's companies that 3D print with sand, very heat resistant, would work really well. They are expensive. This is a nice, cheap way of doing it. And I can share the files with anyone if you want to reach out to me. The mold negative portions, this is made with medium density fiberboard. So there's like 28 of these stacked together. And I put wood glue in between and put these wooden dowels. So I had these dowels standing up, and I hammered and put glue in the middle of all these pieces. So it makes a really nice, strong form that's heat resistant. In the front of this, I did a similar thing. I didn't use as much MDF. I just used the wacky wood, kind of bent it in here. I cut out these blanks on the CNC machine to match the radius there, just slightly offset for the Corian. All right, so now our sheet is up to temperature. We used an IR thermometer and checked. It was a little low, so we put it in for a couple more minutes. Normally, the lower the better if you're doing a large radius. You could do it around 150 C or so. And the higher you have the heat, the more chances that a white color might yellow. In this case, it doesn't matter, and we want maximum flexibility. So it should be right about now. We have everything set up ahead of time. We got our clamps ready, our mold negatives ready. So we're just going to wedge the pieces in the front grooves and the back grooves and then put on the pieces. So let's get to it. Yeah, see how flexible that is? You got it in. Close this. All right. Good. Hold on. You might want to slide it that way, the mold a little.
Which way? This right?
Yeah, there you go. And you do have to kind of work pretty quick because it will cool off. All right. And I'm not clamping too tight back here. I don't want too much distortion in the back. I was just going right like that.
Okay.
All right. So you see this worked out pretty well. It's still extremely hot, so we're going to put hot signs on here. Just so if anyone comes into this room while it's cooling off, it'll probably take about 15 minutes to cool off. We just want to identify that this is hot. And as always, we're wearing heat-resistant gloves, long sleeves. You could potentially, when you're putting one of these molds on, burn your arm if you have your sleeves rolled up or something. So it looks like that worked out pretty well. And the great thing about a cornhole mold is that this is going to hold up outside. And the dye sublimation holds up real well also under UV light. So perfect material for outdoor applications. All right, it's about 40 centigrade, so it's ready to take off. Let's undo this. All right, look at that. Let's put it up here.
Hold it down.
Yep, so it's what we intended.
All right, just a good example, I think, of a thermoforming and dye sublimation together. So now I'm just going to show some other small examples.
All right, these are just a few examples of like dye sublimation and thermal forming together. This is just like an Eagle American flag thing we gave out to all our veterans for Veterans Day, along with this designed for deconstruction little stand. Uses the same technique as this table, the other table we looked at. You can even use it for a cell phone holder. Just quick, easy, like trinkets that you can make. This is made with 1/4-inch material. And a lot of this material is like from off-spec material. And we're a zero landfill site, so anything that's off-spec, a lot of the stuff that wasn't sold, we'll grind up and put into road beds. So very like sustainable story and everything. This is another type of mold that you can make for thermal forming. So essentially it's just 4 pieces of MDF stacked together with this profile in there, and I'm heating up some Corian, and basically you just wedge it in there and then let it cool, and then you can tap it out and you get this type of thing. I haven't sanded this or cleaned it up. This just came out of there, but I'll show you how it works to go in there. So let's put on my gloves, and there should be a piece heated up, and I'll show you just wedging it in there. You see how flexible the Corian becomes. So I'm just gonna get it in here. Look at that. It's kind of fun working with heated Corian. There you go. And then in a few minutes, that'll be cool, and I can tap it out. So a bunch of neat little things you can do.
All right, so hopefully this is some inspiration for everyone. So if anyone has any questions, like our technical consultants or myself, Kevin Urbanski, Trevor King, you may know them. So we have a strong network of distributors across the US and Canada with over 25 warehouse locations and local supply service. You can go to the Corian website, and there's a link down there, a where to buy link, and to find your distributor based on your region. If you need technical support or interested in becoming a certified fabricator, all that information is available through our website. So yeah, thanks for joining us today. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, so we'll open it up to some additional questions now. So we've had a few additional questions come in through the Q&A. If others have questions, please go ahead and feel free to add them in. And so one of the questions that came through is, can you thermoform in the field at an install location?
Definitely. And that's one of the things I should have added with this, but there's a company in Seattle called HeatCon. They make silicone heat pads to custom sizes. So they have 240 volt and 120 volt options. So they'll heat up to like 340 Fahrenheit. which is around 165, 170 centigrade, and you could do it on the fly. Kionovo, and if you want the actual spelling of that, you can email me and ask the same question. But like eBay, they sell these small heat pads. They're silicone. They're kind of similar to the ones that were on early 3D printers. The orange silicone heat pads used to adhere them to the bed of the 3D printers, and it was used for the heating the heat bed. Those work really well for this type of stuff, for thermal forming. So you can spot thermal form also, and then bend it. We did a video a few years ago of doing like a wide sheet shower with coved corners. Works really well for that type of stuff. But yeah, there's options out there, definitely.
Great. How about limitations to thermoforming?
Really like the radiuses, the radii. You can't go too tight. That's the biggest limitation, I think.
Okay. And what's the surface temperature of the Corian when you're forming it?
So, and I said a couple different things. I realized when I was watching that. So we thermal form at 170, but we dye sublimate at 180, sometimes even 185. And that we worked with some like print consultants and had them narrow it in for Corian. For Glacier White, it's like 180, 185. For dye sublimation. And thermal forming, like you can go down as low. It depends on the geometry, but sometimes like if you're doing shower pans, you could go down to like 130 if it's like a slight arc or radius. It depends on the geometry, but that's the range between like 130 and 180 centigrade.
And there's a question around tighter radiuses. Can you thin out Corian for a tighter radius?
Yep, yeah, like in that example I showed, that's what we did for that cornhole board. You can thin it out in the back, you can rebate it. That works really well. A lot of people do that for backsplashes, have been doing that for years. That will definitely work.
And how much time do you have to get the piece in a mold after heating it up?
Yeah, you want to be pretty quick when it's at that hot of a temperature, like 170. You have a little bit of more leeway, so you probably have about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. And also that also depends on the radius, like the geometry. But you want to try and do it as quick as possible.
Okay. All right. And I've had a few questions on the side about how folks can get a hold of that cornhole board. Apparently,
Yeah.
there's some interest in that.
Yeah, just email me here. I'll go back. So this is my email address. Just reach out. I'll send you what I have. But those DFD tables too. Send you anything you need. We're here to help.
Okay, so we still have some more questions coming in. We're going to
Sure.
take them while we have time. Can you do a complex thermoforming bend, creating more of a sphere shape?
I haven't personally explored a lot into spheres, but yeah, and the best way I've seen to do that, and I've made like bubbles, like half spheres, and that is essentially you cut a hole, like a hole in a piece of MDF and stack them so multiple inches tall, and then you just set the Corian in there, and the Corian naturally will droop. That's the best way I found to, and potentially you could cut that out and glue two pieces of that together. That would be the best way, I think, to make a sphere, but I'm sure there's other options. I haven't explored that too much.
Okay. Stephen Patterson asked a question about the temperature, but I think it looks like the question got cut off, and I think maybe you addressed that partially earlier. There was another question that came through that I actually answered over text about, is it possible to use glow-in-the-dark ink for dye sublimation? And I replied that it's possible, but it's not something we've tried as part of a formal project. So I think that's just another example of kind of fun ideas and things that you could try.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anyone who makes glow-in-the-dark dye sublimation ink.
So I just got a text from our technical team. I think it was actually from Tim Wyant, and he said, I may be pronouncing this wrong, Mimaki, Mimaki. They make fluorescent pink and yellow dyes.
Yeah, fluorescent. I'm not sure it's glow in the dark though, but yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sure there'll be more on the market eventually.
Great. And there's a question here about videos online. So We will be sending out links to these webinar videos, and they're not online yet, but we will be adding them eventually. But for now, if you've attended this webinar, if you've registered for it, you will get a link to it afterwards. All right. Okay, so I think that was the last of the questions. So a number of folks have asked if they could get a copy of the slides and the video, and there are a few ways you can access the content. So first, we'll include links in a follow-up email, which will go out in a day or two, or if you're a member of ISFA, you can go to their website and view the recording in the webinar library later this week. And as you can see on this slide, we do have one more fabrication webinar coming up on interior cladding, and please go to the ISFA website to sign up. And thanks so much to everyone. Thanks, Jeffrey. This was fun and also very informative, so really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the day.